So this came up on the Yorkshire bylines quite recently, and I am quite interested to see how these start to go. So what actually happened here? Well, this event that was organised by uh, Bradford for Europe, and there are similar organisations all around sort of the UK, and they have been starting to organise events that basically ask the question: should we rejoin the single market? And I think this is a growing thing. I really do, because it's very obvious, very, very obvious Brexit has not worked. And I think that through this article, like I say, I think it's well worth going through and sort of having a look at some of these musings. I agree with what the guy um has to say. I've got some of my own sort of points I'd like to add and sort of discuss with this. If the guy ever does watch this video or anything like that, and you fancy coming on and having a chat, um, I'd love to find out more about sort of these events or anything like that, or other stuff that you didn't sort of put in in the article. I'd be very, very interested in seeing that. So if you ever fancy sort of coming on, like I say, let me know. We can sort something out. But I think this is certainly the direction that we should go, rather than sort of go for full membership. Rejoining the single market is very achievable. It is doable. And of course, the common complaint you'll see from a lot of people: oh, well, you can't do that because of, you've deregulated, you've done this, etc., etc. Very easy to to replicate, because we just go, okay, we're rejoining the single market, we're going to rejoin on this date. So guess what? That's when all these EU regulations sort of now come into force. We have passed the bill, same with the single market bill. All businesses by this date have to start following those rules and regulations. Job done. Not only does that help relieve a lot of pressure on our economy, it also solves the Northern Ireland Protocol issue instantaneously. So yeah, lots of advantages from rejoining the single market, and I think this is sort of really the direction we ought to go, because once we're back in, as we've said, the question then becomes, well, why aren't we full members? And then that way, once we're back in, once we've sort of achieved that, we can then start to sort of push for full EU membership again. So let's go diving into this, because like I say, I think there's some good stuff that was sort of he talks about in this article, and yeah, we'll go over it. So, but before we do that, though, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and our affiliation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, thank you to all those people who do help and support the channel. There's also the YouTube thank you button, and of course, the Pony Club as well. So, over we go to the Yorkshire bylines. With the title of the article of From Mighty Oaks, Little Acorns Grow. Mighty Oaks from Little Acorns Grow, returning to the single market. And I think it's very aptly named. I think these types of events sort of sprinkled, and I think if the sort of the organizations keep on doing this, and I think there's really potential. Obviously, it's trying to find, I think, more the funding to do it, but you could do a full sort of length and breadth tour of the UK with these types of events. I think it'd be very very interesting to do. So on to it. So it was a very cold evening on the Friday the 9th of December when 24 people gathered in the impressive Victorian Council chamber of Bradford City Hall to engage in a discussion. The topic was the EU single market. Could we rejoin? The meeting was set up by Bradford for Europe, whose members had sensed the tide that had once flowed in favour of Brexit had now turned. The most recent poll that had asked respondents, were we right or wrong to leave the EU, found only 34% answered right, with 51 asserting wrong. Two things are very clear. First, that the government is on the back foot with respect to Brexit, its supposed flagship policy. Second, until recently, the Labour opposition in Parliament was happy to convene with the Conservatives in a conspiracy of silence. Brexit was to be the elephant in the room, and Bradford for Europe was keen to break that conspiracy, and this was just the time when there appeared to be the first glimmers of interest in the British media and business circles, there being the key point that I think it is, business circles, And I think that businesses need to really start to step up to speak out about rejoining the single market and the damage that is really done to British businesses, not only just for the whole of the UK, but for local areas indeed. I would be very interested if you did one of these events that you got maybe someone from the local business community who goes, yeah, this is how business used to be when we're in the single market. This is what it's like now. This is how much money my business has lost, and this has been sort of the consequences that I haven't been able to hire like more local people or expand the business, and etc. etc. I think getting those types of people involved in these conversations, I think, is very, very important. But anyway, back to it. So, in mitigating some of these Brexit damages by rejoining the single market, so a Norway-style deal, is it still a suitable compromise? With the help of a friendly Labour councillor, Bradford for Europe got free use of the council chamber to hold the discussion. We are very fortunate that two friends of ours agreed to lead the discussion. John Foley McTolly not only holds the chair for the European businesses at Bradford University, but also has a son with a dual French-English nationality who works in the EU Commission in Brussels, a rich source of information indeed. That's fantastic. To be honest, I think having those two types of people there were really sort of what you need to do this. So the initial keynote speaker was Richard Wilson, who features at a national level, being the vice chair of the European movement, as well as the chair for our neighbour Leads for Europe. A key point did emerge from the presentation was one, the UK can rejoin the single market without overturning Brexit. The single market was an initiative in the EU that was driven by the British government in the late 1980s when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister. There are 4 countries in the single market which are not in the EU, and the UK could become like Norway, which Britain also had a referendum narrowly rejecting the EU. Norway is not subject to the common agricultural or common fisheries policies, but does have freedom for exporters to trade and citizens to travel. British exporters and British citizens need these freedoms. Before 2021, when the UK left the EU, British exporters sold about 70,000 different products to other countries. Now our exporters only sell about 42,000 products. Small and medium-sized companies have given up because of the complex bureaucracy. Being in the single market would do away with this new bureaucracy. So from the audience, a representative of local businesses and factories in Bradford and Leeds held up an example of the crazy forms that his company now has to fill in for every single product that they sell. He pointed out that this was not needed when the UK was in the EU and won't be needed again if Britain is in the single market. Another member pointed out that Britain's economy is about £100 billion smaller as a result of these trade frictions. The government takes, of course, about 30 or 40% of these economic activity in taxes. And that, funnily enough, matches the £35 billion extra in taxes that the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has just had to raise in November. In short, if we had been in the single market, then the austerity of the November financial statement might not have been a necessity. The efforts have been made to attract Brexit supporters into the meeting for balance, but none chose to actually respond positively to the invitations. Hence, there appeared to be unanimity in the chamber that we should seek to rejoin the single market. The more vexed question was, could we? So, can the Conservative and UKIP poison be drained? A number of unknowns were presented. The main point of access to rejoining the UK via renewed UK membership of the European Free Trade Area, of which Norway is a member, would be Norway and the other 3 ETFMA members wish the UK to join, since we would be certainly swamp them in size-wise. Equally, how would remaining, obviously, 27 members of the EU regard an attempt to the recalcitrant UK to be reversing Brexit? Even during our time as members, the UK consistently came across as the, quote, awkward squad. Although Thatcher had been a prime mover in setting up the single market, she is remembered for also bludgeoning Brussels with her handbag. And Brexit had been the unnecessary, unwelcome nightmare for the remaining 27. A positive straw in the wind did emerge when Professor Tully reported that within the EU Commission, efforts had been made to retrain the English-speaking staff with dual nationalities in post. So could we take this as a sign that a door was being left ajar? And to what extent? Over the years, we have had Conservative and UKIP poison the well of the UK-EU relations. Can that poison be drained? And I think that's a very valid question. A heavy defeat for the Tories in the next general election would go some way to undoing the damage, and a 180-degree policy turn on their part, admission of being wrong, and contrition and atonement would be highly desirable, but equally highly unlikely. It is possible, and I've said a number of times, I think certainly if they lose the next general election, which all signs are pointing that way, there is going to be a civil war in the Tory party, an awfully big civil war. Primarily, certainly for the direction of which way the party wants to go. It's already pulling in so many different directions. There is no one single unifying point. And when they are out of power, those pressures, those pulls on which direction to go, on what they should prioritize, are going to get even more forceful. So there is going to be an unmitigated blue on blue civil war within the Tory party. And it is going to get very, very, very deadly. So, Starmer boxing a little too cleverly. So, what of Labour? Staunch Remainers tear their hair out. At a time when perhaps 3/4 of the Labour voters would look to rejoin the single market, publicly Keir Starmer has, quote, has on more than one occasion set his face against such a course. And at first sight, it does seem Starmer is obsessed with not upsetting the former Labour voters in the Red Wall who voted for Brexit in 2016 and for Boris Johnson in 2019. On a superficial analysis, Starmer looks to be getting this wrong. Now, I've discussed before that this, I think, is a very tactfully long game, and I sort of will go to sort of say that this is really certainly where is this going to go. I very, very much think that this could very well easily be a, Starmer wants to, quote, improve Brexit, but then you get the argument of you can never really improve Brexit to a point where it's as good as what we had. So Starmer can go, well, look, I'm going to make Brexit work. You do the deals that you can with the EU to make Brexit work. And then once you've done that, you then go, okay, guys, this is Brexit. This is as best as it is ever going to be. How about we just, rejoin the single market customs union, because you cannot get anything better than we've currently got now. And I think that is the case, because you do not want to upset those Red Wall voters, because they did vote for Brexit in 2016. And of course, they did vote for Boris Johnson in 2019 as well. That cannot be understated. And I think you have to demonstrate to them, that Brexit didn't work, that you have done everything you can to make Brexit work, but that's as best as it's going to be. Because if you go, right, we're going to sort of reverse Brexit, then what do? You open the door massively, certainly for the Conservatives and even Nigel Farage to make a comeback and go, see, they're reversing Brexit. They never tried it. It was, Brexit was never done properly. Bear in mind, you look at people on the left who always make the claim, oh, communism could always work. It just was never done properly. We would see the same things with Brexit. We would absolutely see the same thing with Brexit. And that would be a massive hole and a massive win and a massive push against the Tories there. So what you really need to do is you need to make it very clear that that was Brexit. That's as best as it was ever going to be. And that, yes, the Brexiteers are wrong. You've got to show and give them absolutely no wiggle room to get out of it, because they, even now, are trying everything they can to get sort of their ideas and version of Brexit done and out there for them to work in their opinion. But of course, yeah, it's really not something that people would actively, shall we say, vote for. But anyway, back to it. More subtly, of course, the Guardian columnist Raffle Beer made a case for Starmer playing a tactically shrewd long game. Is there more to see here? Chris Gray and his Brexit and Beyond blog is the down of the UK commenters on Brexit, and his post on the 9th of December headed, "There is a British strategy available for Labour." Gray is more critical of Starmer than Bear and feels that Starmer has been too admittant in his negative attitude to the single market membership. Helpfully, Gray does identify the courses that Starmer could pursue that would put Labour on the right side of history and the Conservatives on the wrong. Both Liberal Democrats, who have excellent detailed policies in this area, and the Greens are already clearly on the right side of the Angels. In my view, they deserve more support. But where are we going, and just how we will see there, and to what better outcome of the fractured and manufacturing UK political system can actually contrive? In 1791, 12 men met in a library in London to set out to, quote, do something about ending the slave trade. 12 years later, the trade had been ended. The 24 meeting people in Bradford Council Hall, and only on a cold December evening, could similarly be the start of something big. Potentially, yes. I think we are going in the right direction. Like I say, with the whole thing on Starmer, I think it certainly is the right move politically to play. I think you have to show that, Brexit did not work. I think you've really got to do that. I think, Starmer saying, well, I'm going to make Brexit work. You might not be what we want to hear. I'll be the first to admit it. It's not what I want to hear either. I much prefer him going, yeah, we're just going to rejoin the single market. But the thing is, if you do that politically, that is a very, very big risky gamble. Very, very big and risky. Because if you get, Farage coming back, he could potentially come back in a very big way, and we're talking he could win seats. That is the scary possibility, that you get a hung parliament and that there is a Farage faction potentially with some seats floating around. It's not beyond the realms of possibility, and you've got to bear that in mind. You've always got to be careful with that. So, like I say, as always, guys, we'll see what happens and how this goes. But yeah, certainly this is something and a step in the right direction. I would love to see the sort of Leads for Europe do more of these things, and more importantly, as it was said, invite Brexiteers along. Look at who, the local councillors, who were the UKIP people, invite them along to it. Say, we want you to be, part of this conversation. We think it's important. Keep on doing that, and always make it clear that they were invited, because otherwise they'll come back and say, oh, well, we weren't invited, we weren't allowed to be part of it. No, just go, no, look, here's the email, here's the invitation, you were sent, you were more than happy to come along and be part of this conversation. So yeah, as always, guys, like I say, this is politics. This is how it's played. It can obviously be a long game, and obviously sometimes you've got to be very sort of careful in how you do things, because you've got to show and demonstrate, as we said before, that Brexit really was an absolute and total failure. So, as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a notification link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.